Welcome to the Unknown Webcast. My friend Dr. Norman Geisler said that if you're flying a prop plane, you need to continually steer right if you want to fly straight because it goes left on its own, just a sort of a natural drift to the left. Life is like that as well, and so Ron and I keep steering straight in order to maintain, we continue steering right in order to maintain a straight course. In fact, I tell people often, I never turn left if I don't have to. I'm so conservative, I can't even turn left. A word of warning for folks who are joining us. This is not a safe space for those who are easily offended by having their ideas challenged. This is broadcast number 75. We are welcoming yet another first-timer to the Unknown Webcast, but a friend and a fellow traveler in defending the faith, Melissa Dougherty. Our topic tonight is From New Age to Christianity. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast, and our senior researcher is Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of tonight's webcast.
Yes, good evening from beautiful Florida, where all of the snowbirds are now here, and they're all on the road. At least that's what my experience was this morning. Our sponsors tonight include the Designer Jesus Collection. No longer need you be embarrassed by your Jesus with the Designer Jesus Collection, and the Coexist Boutique for when you care enough to take your hands off your loved ones' throats in order to pick out the perfect gift. And to ensure continued access to this program, if you like what you're hearing, or if you don't and you want to annoy someone else with it, please go to midwestoutreach.org and click on the yellow donate button in order to contribute as you feel led. And back to our host and our new guest.
Well, I was going to practice my false teaching shtick and say, if you give $1,000 on our donate button, God will send you $1 million. And if he doesn't, it's his fault. So don't blame me. But I thought I better not do that because I don't want to tempt God in that way. And so we have the lovely Melissa. And I met Melissa actually at a conference of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. But I was quite impressed with her spirit, her desire to serve the Lord. And unwittingly, she put me onto her Facebook page, and so every once in a while I interject myself into what's going on and see who I can irritate easily. We're really glad you're with us tonight. Your Facebook page is, what is the name of it?
The group? It's From New Age to Christianity Recovery Group.
From New Age to Christianity Recovery Group being the key word there. And it's really an interesting group. You have former New Agers mostly there, and you have some that are kind of in the process or seeking, aren't they?
Yeah, we have some that are kind of in between, some that are still full in. Sometimes we have people who are even some atheists we have in there. We have people from, a variety of different beliefs, but I try to make it clear, like, the focus of the group is to get to know who Jesus is, and in light of coming from New Age beliefs. So a lot of them are there just to learn about New Age, though, too, because I don't think a lot of people realize what those beliefs are. So it's a kind of a mix.
Okay. Now, we spoke yesterday at some length as we're experimenting to get you familiar with what we kind of do here. And I had shared my mother was very kind of steeped into the New Age. She went and had her fortune told fairly frequently. She would regularly read her horoscope. Her best friend was a witch, actually a practicing witch. And when I came to the faith, that made for some interesting times. Her favorite author was Edgar Cayce. And although I was a new Christian, I recognized that there were some serious problems with what she believed at the time.
Well, you see, Don, back then, though, we're talking, come on, Don, we're talking like the 60s and 70s, right?
Edgar Cayce. It wasn't called the New Age at that point.
Yeah, right? We didn't use that phrase, New Age. We used, what do we call it? ESP, clairvoyance, Well,
Yeah, I don't know that we had a particular word to frame. At least I didn't. I was. I was like I tell everyone, when I came to the faith, I had been an atheist. So when I came to the faith, I knew so little about the Bible that I went to the Old Testament, and there was this book in there, Job, and I thought it was the one ads. I just didn't know anything. And so no, we didn't have those kind of categories. I just thought it was weird. Of course, I thought Christianity was weird until I became a Christian. So none of that really made sense to me. But my mother was pretty steeped into that. She was sure that she was seeing the future with her fortune tellers and her tarot card readers and books that she was reading and that sort of thing. And Jesus was sort of part of the whole thing. It was a Jesus, but as I discovered later, it really wasn't the Jesus of Scripture. So, Melissa, you might give us a little background. What got you? Were you in the New Age? And what got you interested in starting this Facebook group?
Oh, it's kind of a long story, but there's different aspects of New Age. I was more in the New Thought part of it, and I didn't realize there was even a name for this until I got out of it. It's kind of silly.
So there's a New Thought part. I didn't know there was a New Thought part.
Yeah, New Thought is more mystical. It's more metaphysical. And when I say New Thought, I want you guys to think like Rhonda Byrne with The Secret. I want you to think Oprah. I want you to think Edgar.
Oprah. There's a name I recognize.
Yeah.
Oprah. I didn't get the first one.
That's really how a lot of New Agers, you'll find when they give their testimony, I find that when they're giving it, they give the authors that they were into. So you know what kind of New Age they were into. I was into New Thought, which is basically thoughts are things, law of attraction, manifest, visualization. Those were really big words growing up. Norman Vincent Peale, Fimbus Quimby. My great-grandparents were Christian scientists. So there's a lot of teachings from that religion that seeped into my childhood. And it's really about your mind being able to manifest your reality. That's just the little Cliff's Notes version. So I was really more into the New Thought.
So I take it people have different reality. So your mind introducing your reality, or your mind, how did you say that again?
The whole process, what I was basically taught growing up was your thoughts can become your reality. So whatever you're thinking and feeling will manifest itself in your life.
Just kind of like what you say is what you get, or what you think is what you get. It's like
So let me give you one example, and this really happened. Many things happened in my life, especially growing up. But one thing was my mom, when we grew up in Oklahoma, and we were looking for a house, and she said, I want us all to sit together for a few minutes each day and just visualize what we want in a house and talk about it and try to manifest it. True story. Well, we wanted a 2-story white house with blue shutters, and we wanted a long driveway with trees on either end, and we wanted a pond in the back. And every day we would take a minute and do that. We would visualize. And my mom came home one day in tears, and she said, I found it. I found the house. And she described it perfectly, the way that we, visualized it and manifested it. And I remember at such a young age realizing, oh my, I have power. I can make things happen. And that's really what it's about. It's about thinking you have this inner power, this inner divinity, and you don't realize that there's a word for it or a label. You just think of it as a sense of enlightenment, a higher way of thinking, a higher way of being, a higher spiritual level. It wasn't until this group, ironically, that I realized that there's a lot more to New Age than I realized. I didn't realize that there was all these different aspects of New Age. So everybody there has many different walks of life, many different aspects of an experience in the New Age. And I came out of it. I was really into the law of attraction, but I became a Christian at 16. And a long story short, basically, I mixed my Christianity with these New Thought beliefs, and which really easy to do because a lot of these new thought teachers take aspects of Christianity and mix it together with these metaphysical beliefs.
So the law of attraction, that has nothing to do with like magnets or gravity, does it?
No, law of attraction
Oh,
is a metaphysical belief, basically, that it's a law of the universe, basically, is what you're taught, and it's a
like the
capital
force,
U. It's
like
a
the
capital
force.
U. What's
Oh,
that? Yes, yeah.
like the force. Yeah, a capital U.
Capital U, universe being
Oh,
a
oh,
yeah.
oh.
Yeah. And
Okay.
there's a lot of different buzzwords in the,
So,
in
so Don, this is you're not asking questions. I'm the one asking questions because this is all new to me. But you've heard all this stuff before, Don?
Oh, absolutely. And as a matter of
he's
fact,
part
well,
of the
my
group.
mother was into that,
That's right. Yeah.
and it's interesting that she would say that a lot of the metaphysical teachers mixed Christianity in with what they were teaching, because we have those in the church who mix this metaphysical stuff with supposedly Christianity.
Hmm.
And since I've never been shy about naming names, that would be, oh, I don't know, Kenneth Copeland, Benny Hinn,
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Hagen. They're essentially saying the same thing, and bringing new thought into the church.
But you don't
And
realize.
in fact, you might recall, Ron, in kind of our forward of our Gothard book, as we kind of tracked the beginning of a number of cults from the early 1800s on, we talked about Unity School of Christianity, which
Uh-huh.
is also one of those metaphysical groups, and they had renamed their group probably 5 times before they landed on Unity School of Christianity. So we know that they gave a lot of thought to their name, at least.
The books on my shelf, I have my grandparents' books from long time ago, and she has many books from the Christian School of Unity, and
Okay.
they're all in my shelf. And I became fascinated with it when I was growing up because you think of it as kind of like a magical power, and you want to tap into that, and long story short, I started the group because I mean, I got pulled out of New Thought, New Age because of Jehovah's Witnesses. They came to my door, and it was so funny because I thought it was the law of attraction that brought them to me because I had a lot of, yeah, I know, right? I had a lot of Bible questions, and I was like, oh, yay, they're going to teach me about the Bible. And it was ironic because they did, but in not a direct way. It was because I ended up researching the religion and finding out the dirty stuff, all the good stuff they're not allowed to know, and it snowballed me into a race, almost like just a complete engulfing of research. And I researched a lot, and I realized what I believed was wrong. And it was one simple line I read on a blog that about it being the serpent's lie, basically. And I'm thinking, oh wow, I fell for the serpent's lie. This is, I can be like God, and it's a lie. And all these years later, I got called into ministry to Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, New Age, and I started this group because my sister at the time, um, she became a Christian, and I had nobody. When I first came out, I had nobody to talk to. Nobody understood what it was like. And you have a lot of spiritual experiences that a lot of other Christians kind of can't really understand, or just the belief in general. It's hard for them to grasp, and so I felt really lonely. Well, I thought, you know what? I'm gonna, my sister came out, and I'm like, I'm gonna make this group for her. Hopefully, it'll bring in more people who have been through this before. And it was really slow at first, but in August, I befriended a woman named Doreen Virtue. I had no idea who she was, but she converted to Christianity in January of this year, and she's been going through a crazy sanctification process, and she's come a very long way in a very short time, and me and her become friends, and she entered our group and brought a lot of people with her. And because of that, we've been able to disciple and shepherd a lot of people, and it's been amazing. It's been a ride. It's pretty nice.
I have a thing. I'm going to share this temporarily. When I have been speaking lately, I've been trying to help Christians understand that when they're talking to someone who is in a variety of groups, could be New Age, could be Jehovah's Witnesses, could be Mormons, it could be anything, invariably they will tell you, I believe in Jesus. And then as you start going through what you think is a good, sound questions of orthodoxy, like, do you believe Jesus was God? Do you believe he actually was born of a virgin? Do you believe he was crucified? Do you believe he was resurrected? The answers pretty much are going to be yes on those. And it doesn't really seem to matter which group. It isn't until you start looking at the areas where you disagree that's the problem. And that is because nearly every group, for credibility, wants to add the quality tested, good Jesus keeping seal of approval to whatever it is that they're teaching. If they can somehow have Jesus as part of what they're doing, that makes it sound reasonable and true. It is where you disagree that the problems start coming into play. If you're talking with a Jehovah's Witness, for example, and they go, oh, well, yes, I believe Jesus was born of a virgin. I believe he's the Son of God, but I don't believe he's God the Son. I believe he was Michael the Archangel, who was created by God the Father, who then ceased to exist. And God created a human named Jesus, who was only a human. And then he ceased to exist, and God recreated Michael, who's now in heaven. Now, that's clearly not the Jesus that we believe in.
They wouldn't say ceased to exist, would they, Don?
They wouldn't phrase it that way, but that is what the Watchtower teaches.
If you get down into their,
And we have a whole thing where we ask them the questions from their material. Or if it's a Mormon, what you discover, again, it isn't where we agree, it is where we disagree. For a Mormon, Jesus was born on a planet near a star base called Kolob, as were we, and he's our elder brother who then came to Earth. His father, our father, his father, all of our father, came to Earth and had sexual relations with his daughter Mary in order to give his son Jesus a physical body on this earth so he could become God himself. Clearly, it's not the same God of Scripture. Now, what I really like, though, that I see in your group, Melissa, is that people ask a lot of questions, and there's a lot of interaction back and forth, and not a lot of things like you're just stupid if you disagree.
Yeah. That's actually, it's funny you say that, because a lot of my Christian friends that are apologists are really into the group because of that. They're like, there's no arguing, or if there's healthy disagreement, there's healthy debate, which we encourage. We want people to think, we want them to ask these questions, and we want them to be able to have a safe place to do that, because a lot of times either A, they have Christian friends that have no idea how to answer them, B, somebody gets defensive and they end up arguing or bickering. So a lot of people are kind of, standoffish. They don't want to ask, but I tell them, I encourage them, when you're here, ask these questions, because we want to answer them. There's really good responses to your questions. And a lot of my Christian friends adore that, because they feel it's refreshing for them, because they have all this information and they have all this experience with research and apologetics, and finally have an outlet. People who want to know the information. So it's really good shepherding and discipling for people, for Christians. I encourage the healthy debate, though, because not everybody's going to agree. And I tell everybody, remember the essentials. If you got the essentials right, you're okay. The rest of the stuff is kind of a fun sanctification process. There's a lot of stuff I don't understand yet. And I don't really lose any sleep over it, because I'm still learning a lot, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I feel like I've taken the plunge. I know who Jesus is. I feel confident in defending that. The other stuff, it just seems like paperwork, it's fun to research, and well, let's figure it out. But at the end of the day, your salvation has nothing to do with these particular topics. So I try to tell them that, keep
So
there.
is your mom still into the New Age stuff?
New Thought, yes, and
New Thought stuff.
yeah, she is, and it's difficult because I kind of say that my mother speaks out of both sides of her mouth, because she'll say one thing that sounds very Christianized, and then she'll say another thing that totally contradicts what she just said. So it's the major issue is whenever you're in these beliefs, you want everything to fit together like this beautiful puzzle. You don't want anything to contradict. That coexist sticker you showed, that's perfect because that's the average thought of a New Ager. You just want all these beliefs. You want many paths to God. You don't want one path,
Well, if you look closely when I show it again, it's not the same one you see on the bumper sticker.
I know. Yeah, I noticed. I noticed. But it reminded me of the coexist sticker, of course.
Oh yes.
Well, I the one I like, which we don't use here, at least we haven't yet, is the contradict, which has similar kinds of.
Yeah.
Mike Przybylski asks, Melissa, is it possible that there is an industry out there that speaks out against the New Age and cults and so forth just for the sake of selling a book or video?
What was the question? If they
are there groups out there, and industry is the way they put it, but are there maybe organizations or even websites that speak out against New Age and or cults just so that they can sell books and videos?
I don't see the purpose in why somebody would do that. I mean,
to sell books and videos.
Yeah, I mean, but still, though,
Make money.
I don't think so.
It's not a high profit. I mean,
I was gonna say, like, if you're gonna call out anybody, why don't you go make a living calling out Christianity itself? I mean, there's plenty of scholars doing that, and they're making some good living. Go look at Bart Ehrman. I mean, let's go talk to him. Why call out New Age? That's kind of, I mean, if you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. I mean,
well,
that's all
I think of the Magnificent Randy. Remember him, Don? Is he still alive?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Now I don't think he focused on New Age. He just focused on anybody who made wild claims of. Well, it included some Christians. Peter Popov, who claimed he was, hearing the voice of God, and it turned out that God talked to him on the FM band in his left ear.
Exactly, with a female voice.
Yes, and that could be picked up on just regular radio equipment, just an FM band radio. You could pick it up with, and then anybody who made these sensational claims. It didn't matter what their religious background was, but that's the closest thing I can think of to somebody who might have gone after New Age. Back in the 80s, I first heard, New Age, that's when the term came out, and they were the first ones, remember, Don? They were the first ones to use the rainbow. Remember, everybody had those rainbow stickers in the back of the windshield of their car?
And in fact, in Chicago, we had one of the very first New Age radio stations, WNUA, Music for the New Age.
But that was nothing to do with the religion. That was just mostly instrumental music and jazz, and they didn't know what else to call it. It was a marketing label. What do you call this music? It doesn't fit in any other genre. Okay, it'll be Music for a New Age.
Music for a New Age.
I have some of those records. Well, anyways,
and New Age Magazine, they had New Age Magazine, which was if you put that in Psychology Today side by side, they were like virtually identical.
Well, they probably plagiarized each other. Well, in any case, I had a friend who had a friend who was doing daycare, and the woman for whom she was doing daycare would tell her when she came to pick up the kids or drop them off, she'd tell my friend about all this New Age stuff that she was into. And my friend would look at me and say, do you realize this person has a master's degree, and here is what she believes? And like, she would go to these seminars, and she would buy things like a device that you're supposed to put your meat that you buy at the store, any food you buy, you put it under this light to get the life energy back into it, because we just had scanners. This is when we first came out with scanners to scan your produce and your food and everything else. and these scanners would suck out the life energy from the food, and you needed to restore it. And I said, did you get a good look at this light contraption? Oh, yeah, it was just a UV tube. That's all it was. I think the woman who sold it to her was somebody named Claire Prophet.
Elizabeth Claire Prophet?
Elizabeth Claire Prophet. Is there a speaking of industry, is there do you buy a lot of stuff? Is there a lot of new age, like we have Jesus junk? Is there like new age knickknacks that you can buy?
Knickknacks, I like that.
Yeah.
What are some of the new age knickknacks that you can get?
Well, you're wow, that's a loaded question, because I'm sure that any new ager watching this is probably like, yes. There's a lot. I never particularly used them, and there's a lot of people in the group that would probably know a lot more about this than me, but oh man, crystals were huge.
Oh yeah, crystals, right.
Oh, crystals, they have energy, and they would, do this. Books, there was particular certain emblems you have. Man, it's like escaping me. There were certain rods you'd use. There's a lot of new age knickknacks, and some of it can be incredibly expensive. I remember my sister, she was definitely new age, very new age, very new thought, in it, very deep. And it's kind of sad because she's gone back to it, but that's a different story. She had this little, it was like a little magic wand, and it was a chakra thing, and it had a little crystal on the top. It was very pretty. And I remember looking at it thinking, that would make a good, pretty decoration. And she spent something like $500 on this little.
Really?
Thing. Yeah, like it's a really expensive market. And I'm sitting here thinking, what a dumb buy that is, because, first of all, I do believe that there's a spiritual warfare aspect with it. I mean, you're purchasing these items thinking they have power in them. But the person who
I wonder what the markup is on that.
Exactly, the person who's profiting off of it, I wonder. And there's so much. There are so many knickknacks. People in the group, there's people that have thrown out thousands of dollars worth of product after they became Christian.
See, now if you switch over from New Age to Gothardism, you would throw it out because it is possessed by Satan, right, Don? You would, that's why you throw out your Cabbage Patch dolls, because they might. Is your son?
Right?
Okay.
Because Gothard would teach that a demon has attached itself to like this mask or whatever, and so by bringing it in your house, you've now brought demons in who are prowling about in the dark recesses of your home and late at night.
But with New Age knickknacks, I might actually believe that in some cases, that there might be some really
well. And then there's New Age places like Iona is supposed to be near is Scotland. It's supposed to be the thin place where you can really get in touch with the other world.
I need a thin place, Don. I
want to. I put my inner child on a diet, but he rebelled, so it's kind of a problem. And with that, we are at the top of the hour, and we should hear from one of our sponsors.
Well, we always should do that. We can't hear enough from them. You know what? Do you cringe when Christians you hang out with try to introduce Jesus to your non-Christian friends? Well, you can say goodbye to the days when your church's Jesus was a source of social embarrassment. Now, even your church can keep pace with the latest fashion-forward trends in spirituality. Introducing the Designer Jesus Collection. These amazing new Jesus styles are hitting church runways in the most exclusive Jesus fashion shows at churches near you. You won't want to miss Yoga Jesus, Hipster Jesus, Buddy Jesus, Socialist Jesus, and of course, Mormon Jesus. At Designer Jesus Collection fashion shows, you will find a Jesus you'll be proud to introduce to your most sophisticated, cutting-edge friends and acquaintances. Please observe the attendance requirements, the cost of admission, your eternal soul, required attire, semi-formal. All proceeds benefit His Royal Majesty of the Kingdom of Darkness. The Designer Jesus Collection, London, Paris, Rome, New York, Salt Lake City. Yes, don't miss it. It is
Don't miss
the
it,
most important
designers.
social event, and maybe spiritual too, of your life.
You know, and very often as I'm talking with the people, and I mention this from time to time, they might say to me, my Jesus would never fill in the blank, condemn someone to be eternally separated from him or whatever. And I have to say, I believe that. I believe your Jesus wouldn't do that. But the problem is that's because you invented your Jesus. It's not because that's who the Jesus of Scripture is. You know, it is true. Jesus of Scripture is meek and humble and lowly, but it is also true that he said he is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by him. He's very exclusive in that statement. He doesn't really allow for many paths to get to where you want to go, or many different types of Jesuses. And you know, you either have to live a sinless life from the moment you're born until the moment you die, or you have to call on his name for salvation. And he has died to and physically raised himself from the dead to provide for that salvation. So there was a cost to pay, and he paid it. And therefore, he has the right to tell somebody, depart from me, I never knew you. He does have that right.
Well, you know, a lot of people are going to wonder on the last day, where's my Jesus?
Right.
Yeah, that's not going to be fun. That's not going to be a fun day. So anyways.
One of our viewers says that they have a cousin that has a new age shop. It's not really a question, it's a comment. There's a lot of that out there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It's one of those things because it's unavoidable. And one of the things I've noticed is ever since I kind of abandoned these beliefs, the more I'm noticing it out there. And it's everywhere. It's in media. It's in, where celebrities like Jim Carrey. I mean, I don't know if you've been keeping up with Mr. Carey lately.
No, I haven't. Do tell.
Oh yeah, he's something's happened with him. And it's funny because the first time I ever saw him speak about these new beliefs that he has, I'm like, ooh, new age, like you're so in deep. And of course, if you're in the new thought, like especially Eckhart Tolle, Tolle is really big about teaching about the ego. And the ego is basically the part of yourself that's holding you back from your higher spiritual self. Well, whenever you overcome the ego, and there's more to it than this, but press for time. When you overcome the ego, you get this enlightenment. Well, basically, people that are believing that believe that Jim Carrey has basically he's awake, he's enlightened, and I'm like, I probably would have believed that, but it's that's just one aspect. I mean, there's with these beliefs, it's a salad bar belief system. You just kind of take what you want to believe and throw out what you don't. And the Bible is a very subjective book, so you take what you like about it, and you follow that, and you leave out the rest. And
this reminds me of our sponsors, Bible Buffet. We have another sponsor who's not on tonight. The Bible Buffet. He said a salad bar system where you or like a buffet system, cafeteria style.
Yeah, and there's even in the group there's a lot of like right now today actually I think the subject of hell got brought up, and we've gone over all kinds of difficult questions. Old Testament wrath. We've gone over is Jesus really the only way? How do you know you can trust the Bible? All these different questions, and the one that got brought up today was hell. And my whole thing that I'm trying to shepherd to them is teach to them in that way is there's answers to these. If you're searching, there are answers. And there's this aspect of kind of laying down your will and accepting who Jesus is, whether you like it or not. So I mean, you brought up a different Jesus. The Jesus of the New Age is a big, soft, squishy teddy bear. I mean, he's loving all the time, and he's meek and he's an ascended master, you know, and so he's only God's son in the sense that he found his divinity, you know, something we all supposedly can do. And he's the way shower. He's, you know, and Christ consciousness is the new age buzzword, which basically teaches that Christ is a way of thinking. It's a higher metaphysical enlightenment, basically. And when Jesus claimed to be God's son, when he claimed to be the Christ, that's what he was claiming to be. So, I mean, you take these biblical concepts and you mix them all up and you make up your own belief. And I think it was Sandra Tanner, who's she used to be Mormon, UTLM is her website. She once said, if you ever find yourself agreeing with a Mormon, you haven't defined your terms. And I'm like, wow, that's true across the board. If you ever find yourself agreeing with somebody in the New Age or Jehovah's Witness, you haven't defined your terms. You're using the same words, but they mean something totally different.
Mm-hmm. You know? So, you know, sometimes, I mean, when I hear you talk and describe the New Age, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of jargon involved, and you go through it very quickly. And I had questions a few minutes ago that I've already forgotten. So, but that's okay, because
that's only your truth, though, Ron.
Yeah, that's my truth. Well, that's my quest, I guess, to figure out what I'm hearing. When so much of it sounds Wiccan to me.
Oh, Wiccan's part of it. I don't know very much about witchcraft or that aspect. If I'm understanding correctly, Wiccan has a lot to do with the nature elements.
Yes.
It does, and you know, the first thing you would discover with Wiccans is if you go, for example, when I go to the Parliament of the World's Religions, they'll have a number of Wiccan groups that will do panel discussions, and each of them start off with, Wicca is for me, and then they'll describe it, because what they would say is there's no universal, this is what Wicca is. Each of them have their own truth about Wicca. The only thing they seem to agree on is what's called the Wiccan Rite of Three, and harm none, do as you will. So from that point, you can develop it in any way you want, any kind of ritual, any kind of deity you like. The Fellowship of Isis has their collection of deities. Covenant of the Goddess has their collection of deities. If I wasn't Christian, I'd be a Wiccan. I think it's a cool religion. It's just false.
You'd be a really good New Ager, Don.
So,
I wanted for nothing. It was the craziest thing, because I wasn't searching for truth at all. I didn't have any idea that what I believed was wrong. I was happy as a clam. And that's what a lot of people claim, you know. A lot of people in the group have had these spiritual experiences that have totally changed their direction.
So was this a bit unsettling for you at first, to begin to realize that, hey, this stuff might not be the real thing?
I remember feeling kind of a cold rush. I remember the exact moment. I was sitting in this very chair in a different house, though, and I'm on my computer, you know, and I remember sitting back, just, oh my word, it's like I'm lying. Like, it was a lie. It was all a lie, and I remember it took me about 6 months to even talk about it to anybody, any of my Christian friends. I felt embarrassed. I felt like I should have known better, because the whole time I was calling myself a born again Christian, you know, and
wow.
Oh yeah, I was saved when I was 16. I was just really biblically illiterate. I had nobody. I had no mentor. I had nobody to come alongside me and shepherd me. I had nothing like that. And I had a lot of questions, and that's part of it, is nobody could answer them.
So were you attending a church? Were you attending a church while you claimed to be a born again Christian, and we're still into the new? Okay.
I went to a arguably cult-like. It was a very legalistic Baptist church, and it's still that way on many aspects. They've kind of relaxed a little bit, which is nice. But I mean, you weren't allowed to listen. What's that?
They weren't able to out you. They didn't spot you as
no, I was really, you know how, you know, when you first become saved, you know how you go on your honeymoon with God, just everything's fantastic. You're just so in
Yeah.
love with him. I just kind of had
Mine was in
that.
Acapulco, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I had that really ignorant bliss. I was just really, I felt like a million tons had just been taken off of me. I woke up and this night I went to sleep in a nightmare and I woke up in like this Disney movie. Just everything's perfect and fantastic. And I felt really new. It was a really amazing experience when I got saved, but the problem is that I just remained really biblically illiterate. And I had no idea because you're using the same terms. You're using
Mhm.
Jesus, you're using salvation. You're taking biblical concepts and you're twisting it to make it sound more mystical than it was. I believed it to be a
Mhm.
Christian concept.
Mhm.
And mind you, my family were Christian scientists. So my mother was there
Wow.
influencing a lot of these beliefs and just kind of unifying. It didn't matter if they were Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, whatever. You unify all beliefs. You find what you have in common, you find what is good about it, and you go with that. Let the rest go.
That
So
makes
yeah,
that makes holidays a lot more pleasant, with the
right?
family. Yeah.
Yes, no disagreeing.
Well,
It,
so you would say you were a believer. You understood the basics of the gospel at 16. So there's no question in your mind that you met the real Jesus at 16. Is that what you're saying? And
yes,
then, okay, you met him. You
100% was born again. I still to this day, in
right,
hindsight, 100%, I
right.
was saved. I didn't grow
So,
at all.
and because of your lack of being shepherded, your lack of being discipled,
Yeah.
you were dragging all this new age baggage into your Christian life and really doing what we all do. I mean, I was saved out of a Roman Catholic background, and it took me months to sort out, okay, what was good from this and what should
What
I
was
leave
true? What
behind?
was, yeah, it's a
Right, like the
sanctification
Trinity.
process.
I had a
Yeah.
question. The Trinity, is this real? I mean, I'm hearing that all this other stuff isn't good. Should I keep this Trinity thing? And I was relieved to find out that, yeah, this is something that I was taught that was proper and good. Um, but and I've had friends. What you're describing is as something I've seen in other people who may have. I'm not sure if they were from a New Age background, but they had a lot of wacky ideas that they were bringing into their Christian lives in the beginning. So,
Yeah. It's basically and it's so interesting when I tell that part of my story because a lot of ex-teenagers have that interesting aspect too that I can relate to. They had this experience with Jesus, but mine I was a very different person after I became a Christian. It's just again, I was a very ignorant one. I didn't grow and I was very just whatever you believe is fine as long as you believe in God, you're good. It's just we all have um somebody in the group once said that there's many different paths to Jesus but one way to God, and I'm like that's a good one because you can find many different ways to Jesus but he's the only way.
that's a
I thought
good
that was
way. Yeah.
yeah.
What you raise is an important issue, and part of what we're trying to do a few things tonight. One is to get people familiar with who you are and the ministry you're involved with, so they can pray for you and the group. It's an important, very important ministry. Number one. Number two, and we discussed this last night. There's this kind of I don't know if it's an idea, practice maybe amongst evangelicals of this is how you present the gospel, and this is the only way you present the gospel, and they accept it or don't accept it. But in reality, you have different things going on in people's minds. New Agers think about God one way, Jehovah's Witnesses think about God another way. Add that into the mix of within each group, individuals have different ways that they approach how they're going to make decisions about things. And how we deliver information. So there's a lot going on in this process. So I would talk with a New Ager differently than I would talk with a Jehovah's Witness, for example.
Yeah.
There's not a one size fits all. And one of the things so that's the first thing. I want Christians to understand that. Number one. Number two, deception is available for everybody,
Yeah.
including me.
Yeah, me
Uh,
too.
we are all deceived at some point, to a little degree, a large degree, but every one of us are deceived at some point. And that doesn't mean we're not intelligent. It means we're just unprepared for the deception that's coming our way. Thirdly, and this kind of speaks to the churches again, is how do you minister to people, not only those who've been in your church a long time, but those who are coming fresh into the church? How do you give them the opportunity to ask questions in a non-threatening way, kind of like you're doing on your group? I'll never forget, years ago, when the first time I went to Israel, I was on a plane. Next to me was a lady reading some New Age book. And so there's several evangelicals, of course, in this group, and she was in a group with us. And so I asked her some kind of a question, and she gave me this kind of "go away, you fundamentalist, narrow-minded bigot" sort of response. And I thought, well, this could be fun, that's the kind of response I sort of like. And so
it was a long plane ride, wasn't it, for her?
I had great, because I asked her the same question. So she gave me another sort of "go away, you fundamentalist, narrow-minded, bigoted" kind of response. And so I ask her again, and so she closes her book. She goes, "Okay, you want to go for it? Let's have a discussion." And she started going down the track, and about halfway into her monologue, 20 minutes into it or whatever, I said, "How did you develop your worldview?" And she just stopped. It was like, hit the brakes. She said, "What's a worldview?" And so as I explained to her that our view of the world determines how we make our decisions about life, eternity, this side of eternity, those kinds of questions. Where do we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going when we die? And why should we live any particular way at all? And she said, "I had never heard of that." Now, as it turns out, she was a reader of something called the Urantia book, which is a New Age work. And in that work, there's 176,000 Jesuses, and Urantia is the name of this planet, and that is the book for this planet and the Jesus of this planet. And so for 10 days in Israel, she was right by my side every step of the way, asking questions, writing down notes, talking through issues. And then she told me before we went home, she said, I was asked to leave a lot of churches in my growing up years because I asked questions, and they would always say, "You just want to argue." She said, "I just wanted answers."
Yeah.
And they would give me this, "You just take it by faith." And she said, "What does that mean?" So she's a really solid believer. She had accepted the Lord as a youngster. She rededicated her life, and she's one of the best, smartest apologists in her part of the country right now. But it took that plain conversation and the ability for her to ask hard questions without fear of being made to look silly or something like that.
Or told not to, or told, "Oh, just believe, have faith." One of my favorite, I actually have, it's so funny, I'm reading this book right now. It's J. Warner Wallace. He's one of my favorite apologists. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him, but he just wrote a book called Forensic Faith, and one of the aspects of the book is teaching why you need to go out on this battlefield and go talk to atheists, find out what they believe. You need to train yourself, not teach, especially your children. He's saying don't teach your children, train them. Put them in a position where they're going to have to defend their faith, and do it over and over and over and over again. And it taught me that not everybody is an evangelist.
Right.
Everybody needs to be a case maker. And that means you got to ask hard questions. And being told, "Oh, just believe, just have faith." Some aspects of this Christian walk, yes, we're going to need faith. We have to have faith with some things, but a lot of things are very researchable and there are answers to them. And I want that open door policy, because if it's the truth, it's going to stand on its own. You should be able to go out and research whatever you want about Christianity. Like we just had somebody bring up the whole "is Jesus a myth" thing in the group, and I'm like, ooh, I know this. I researched a ton about this, and no, he's not, and here's why. And I felt really good because I knew. But the first time that I came across that, It shocked me because I wasn't prepared for it. And I want them to be prepared. I want my kids to be prepared, you know? I want them to be like, oh, I know that. I've heard this before. I've heard this argument, you know? And the only way to get there is to have that open door policy, so to speak. You know, you're allowed to ask questions. It's okay to have doubts, and it's okay to not know it all, you know? And God can accept your doubts. It's just your disbelief that I think makes.
Well, and the field training is really important. Now, my kids, as you can imagine, Joy and I are both involved in apologetics, so they were raised in an apologetics home, and we talk to everything. We talk to the radio, we talk to the TV, we talk to the newspaper, we talk to everything.
I saw you talking to a rock the other day.
Yeah, and I do. I have talked because I stubbed my toe and I was not happy about it. So And my daughter at one point said, oh, Mom, or no, my son said, there was a commercial on, and my wife stopped and she started talking to the commercial. And my son, who was probably 12 at the time or 10, said, oh, Mom, you're just trying to get to the point of everything, which is true. But they grew up with that. And so now in their adult life, that's what they do. They ask good questions, and they know how to defend the faith. And they've watched me talk with a Wiccan, where and one of my favorite things to do, I have one question that I like to ask, because in Wicca, like many New Age views, is that all truth claims are equally true and valid. Your truth is true for you. My truth is true for me. Even if they seem to contradict, they're still both equally true. And so I and Bill Hunsberger, actually from Denver, developed this question. I like to ask Wiccans, well, okay, is it okay to burn witches? And their response is, well, of course not. Well, why not? Maybe my truth is good to burn witches. Well, no, because the Wiccan Rite of Three says, and harm none, do as you will. Okay, but isn't it the case that that's only true for you? That's not necessarily true for me. I mean, to burn a witch, to beat a witch, or to take a witch to lunch really are just morally equal choices. It might be wrong for you to burn a witch, but you couldn't really objectively say it's wrong for me to burn a witch, could you? Because that would require some kind of an absolute truth by which we could measure things. Now we have an opportunity to start discussing some of this stuff, but you have to establish a baseline before you can really move in that direction.
I hear you didn't get the best reaction to that line of reasoning one time.
Oh, probably more than one time. But...
and I don't worry about you talking to the TV or the radio. It's when you think they're talking back that concerns me.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. But okay. Well, what maybe we should talk about, some of these social situations that we get into with when we encounter people from different belief systems than our own. What do you think, Don?
Yes, I think it's time for doing that. Yeah.
Do you struggle with finding the right wine to bring to pagan goat sacrifices? Do you wonder what to wear to your neighbor's neo-Nazi parties? Do you get anxiety attacks when trying to find the right picket sign to share with your friends from Westboro Baptist Church? Now you can put an end to all the worries that come from trying to fit in with people on opposing sides of the culture wars, because you can find the perfect gift for any ideology at the Coexist Boutique. This week's special deal in honor of the 50th anniversary of Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution. Relive the days when university students subjected their professors to public shaming sessions for not exhibiting politically correct opinions and behaviors. Oh, wait a minute. That's what's going on right now in the USA. Okay, this week's special in honor of all that, Cultural Revolution eyewear. Genuine smashed Chinese prescription lenses and frames formerly owned by PhDs and university administrators who were dragged out of their classrooms and offices and flogged for creating a new cultural elite dating back to the 1966 to 76 Cultural Revolution. 99 cents a pair, only at the Coexist Boutique, for when you care enough to take your hands off your loved ones' throats in order to pick out the perfect gift. And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's all of this cultural wars and everything. It's making it very difficult to buy gifts. I think that's the real crisis we're facing right now.
Okay, so It is. We're culturally we are there because there's a battle for who gets to decide how everyone else ought to live. Allowing for differences in beliefs doesn't seem to be the policy of the day culturally. However, as Christians, do we have to force people to believe exactly what we believe?
Oh no.
No.
I don't think it's force.
I don't think it's possible to force people to
Yeah.
believe exactly what you believe. And now, I don't even think it's. I mean, I think it's the Holy Spirit. You know.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. It's funny. Yeah.
It's not my power of persuasion. Even that was something that was some of the baggage I carried in from my previous life before I became a Christian, was this belief that if you just had the right set of arguments, if you just had impeccable, flawless logic, if you had a complete mastery of the facts, I'm not saying those are bad things. In fact, they're good things. We should strive for them, but they ultimately will not persuade. So I was, working on apologetics as a young Christian, and one of my
Back when you had hair, right?
back when I had and didn't have other things that I now have, I remember having the wind taken suddenly out of my sails by a wiser Christian gentleman who said, "Well, don't forget, Ron, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." And I hated that. I thought that can't be true. Come on, I can have such an overpowering argument that they just, all of their resistance just collapses like a house of cards. And I found out, oh, that guy was right. So.
Well, he is, and it isn't always logic that brings someone to the faith. It is a decision they make. I was in Melissa, you may not know this. I was in construction for 40 years. I've been bivocational pretty much all of my ministry life, and construction management was what I did. And I built one of the things I did was in Chicago. We redid the interiors of a building for a particular organization. And along one wall, they had about 10 offices, all occupied by women. We did everything new. All of the new mechanicals, heating, air conditioning, had the air balanced, measured, tested, so we knew exactly what was coming out of the vents and so forth. And within a few days of moving in, I started getting phone calls, not from one, but from nearly every woman in those offices. And one would say, "I'm hot." Another would say, "I'm cold." And so I would go down there and I'd look at everything. The thermostats are adjusted and they're running properly. And I could test the ambient air and it was fine. And I would explain that to them and I would show them the figures and they would look at me and go, "Okay, but I'm hot." I couldn't convince them. So I did this really weird thing. I went out and I bought 10 thermostats. And I screwed them to the wall in each office. They weren't connected to anything. And I did it on a Saturday. I never got another call after that. And I don't know what it tells us exactly. But they seemed to be feeling better about it if they had control of the thermostat. Right? So what was it that persuaded them? It was they thought they had control over their environment.
Yeah.
Right? It had nothing to do with the objective realities that I was explaining to her.
It's like when you give a little kid a little toy steering wheel in the car and he thinks he's driving, right?
Maybe so. But, it is, my friend, the late Jan Moskowitz, said a similar thing to what your friend said. We would have him speak in an apologetics conference and he would stand up and the very first thing he would say is, "I don't like apologists," which got everybody's immediate attention. And he would say, because they think that if they give the right argument, somebody will believe. But faith is an act of the will, not a function of information. What he means by he's not saying information is not involved. He was clear to say you do need to know what you're talking about. He was saying they're going to decide to believe or not believe. You can't force the decision. And they have to come on their own terms. Pardon?
It's like the sower and the seed parable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Very much.
you were basically demonstrating the placebo effect only with thermostats.
Kind of. So, Melissa, what is it that you would want to tell Christians and churches about those who are leaving the New Age? How can they minister to them?
You mean as far as like how to witness to a New Ager?
Well, that's one aspect, but more than that, once they decide to leave the New Age, they come to the faith, what next?
I think a lot of it is what you're seeing in the group. They have a lot of questions, and we need to know how to answer them. And I think there's an aspect of understanding their story though too. And I think a lot of Christians, not a lot of Christians, more, I think we're careful. We don't really want to believe that there's a lot of spiritual activity going on, but I just heard a crazy testimony today from an ex-channeler who would channel spirits, and you hear these stories from these people who are genuinely in love with Jesus, and it had nothing to do necessarily with, it's they've had these experiences, and validating them is really important too, because telling them that didn't happen or that's in your mind or whatever, kind of not the best place to go about it. So I think that a lot of churches kind of need to accept that there are people dabbling in the occult, and there are spirits out there that are masquerading, and these people are experiencing that. I think that's the first part. And the second part is kind of just educating, knowing what this is, because there are people that walk through our doors at church every single week that are entangled in new thought and new age teachings. I was one of them. And I can't really blame the church or anything. It was my own ignorance and my own laziness, basically, of not researching the Bible, and getting my questions answered. I was 16, so at the time, the internet, I still had encyclopedias on my shelf. So I am only 32, so
Those relics of a
yeah.
bygone day. Yes.
You would think that, I mean, now you have it at your fingertips, but it's kind of a mess to go online. You have to, you kind of have to keep researching. But I think knowing their story and meeting them where they're at is important. But also knowing that there is a definition of terms that needs to happen. Maybe knowing what they believe, um, and kind of starting with that. Just kind of having this. I have this saying that I always say, it's seek to understand, then be understood. So I, it's really interesting how this works, because I'm a very curious person, and it gets me in trouble sometimes, almost to the point where people get defensive because I'm asking so many questions, like an investigator, a detective, and I'm like just genuinely curious. Like, I really just want to know what you think about this. I'm not trying to get to any agenda. I'm literally trying to understand your point of view. I'm really just wanting to know. And then once I understand the concept of where they're coming at, and I do this with Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons too, once I really get what they believe, then I can go and try to be understood. And I think that is a concept with a New Ager that we really need to do too, because understanding where they're coming from, and what they believe, we can kind of see from the perspective of almost like a jury. We're trying to understand this bigger picture, and the only way to really do that is to ask them their story, and understand, and ask a lot of good questions to them too.
Melissa, you kind of hinted just briefly that, well, I don't know if you meant to hint it, but this is what I was picking up, that dabbling in this stuff can be dangerous.
Oh, it is.
And you're dealing with the demonic.
Yes, and you don't realize that. That's the trick, is you don't know what these spirits, they're not mean. They're nice. They're beautiful.
According to
the experiences that you have. I personally, and I was a Christian, and I opened the door. I mean, and I've had some experiences. I mean, they're intense, and they're not nice. And these, I know that there's many New Agers, especially ones with spirit guides, who these spirits are lovely. They're nice, they're beautiful, they're wise. And there's points where they get malevolent. They will turn on you. And that's when it's ironic, because a lot of New Agers, I just made a post about this the other day, about the strategy of Satan, like the spiritual warfare. I'm like, that's kind of stupid on his end, because a lot of these New Agers didn't believe in demons. They don't believe in evil. And then these spirits make themselves known to be evil. And the only thing that makes them go away is the name of Jesus. I mean, and they're like, oh, what's up with Jesus? You know, oh, let's look into this, you know? And I'm like, had they just not shown themselves, they would have been none the wiser, you know?
Paul talks about doctrines of demons, but this is really, we're going beyond that into direct contact with demons when we get into some of this.
Yeah. Well, we are running over a few minutes, so we are going to cut it off for tonight. We're going to revisit this next year, probably, if Melissa's up for it again, and maybe we could have Doreen join us also. That could be fun.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think I would like to explore that whole issue the next time of, you know, the chances people are taking, the risks that they're getting involved in, you know, channeling spirits and things like that. That's kind of scary.
But in our perspective, it is. To theirs, it's very different. That's what I mean. You have to understand it from their perspective first.
Right. And that's really important. So if you're up for it, I'd like to do this again, and maybe we could have someone else come along. You can pick someone to kind of tag team with. Now that you've got your feet in the water and see how muddled we get and how we wander all over the place, which reminds me, Ron, you might want to walk us out of here so that people know a little bit more about us.
Okay, yeah, well, they'll find out.
By the way, go to our website, click the donate button if you'd like to support us, or if you'd like to just keep us on the air to irritate somebody else.
Yeah, that's always an option, you know. Okay, well, anyways, our resident cult leader profiler is Neil before me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Our Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and D. Opposer. Our Mormons Archives manager is Polygumus. Our Liberal Denominations Bureau Chief is Lucy Goosey. Our transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur. Special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys, Oh, Dehumanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yoleg Pulling. Our technical assistance comes through Murky Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Our grievance resolutions director is Giovanna Pisami, and our director of privacy assurance is Wiretapping. Original idea sourcing comes from Drew at Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, who are solely responsible for its content, but you'll never be able to prove that in a court of law. And now it's time.
And now, if we had a song, we could sing goodbye.
And now it's time to say goodnight.
Good night, all, and we will see you next time.
All right.